the last piece of birch that I have to rough out. This is paper birch. I roughed the other half of this, hoping to get this feather in the bottom of the bowl, and it didn't work out like that. Not exactly sure why. It's like maybe I somehow cut all the way through it, but it looks like it comes all the way through. So I'm gonna try again on this side. I think what I'm gonna do is cut this part off, and try to get a bowl closer out of this end in hopes of keeping the bulk of this. You know, it does look like it should go all the way through, but you can see here you can't really see it. So I don't know. It's gonna be a little bit of an experiment, but it looks like it's gonna have some really pretty figure if I can keep it. So I'm just gonna whack off a little bit of this so that it's a little bit more balanced. I'm gonna try and start it between centers so that I can adjust it a little bit. Okay, so somewhere about there be the center. Yeah. So what I'm trying to do here is line the blank up so that all of the corners are more or less in the same plane, assuming that's where I want them. And in this case it is, because I'm trying to keep the section there where that branch came out the side, and so I want to make sure that it's as level as I can get it, and then hopefully that's going to keep that figure that I'm after in the bottom. Lyle Jamieson has some really good videos on planning your blank and how to mount it and considerations in doing so. I'll put a link up in the corner and also in the description box. You should definitely check them out. He's got some really good in-depth drawings and explanations. Come on. The first few blanks that I tried to cut, I cut completely wrong. So his videos were really helpful for me. I think maybe I had it right just about there. Probably close enough. The overhead camera isn't in the same place, so I don't have video as far over as being able to see the readout. I'm pretty sure that I started this at around 350. When the blank is relatively balanced, you can use just a regular push cut and it doesn't beat the tar out of you. Mounting it between centers does allow you to get the speed up a little bit higher than if it was really off balance. And I don't have to do that little pivot cut a whole lot on this blank. I know for you experienced turners out there watching, some of the live footage of roughing the blank is not terribly exciting, but I do think that it is helpful for people who are just starting out to realize it takes a lot longer than it looks like when the video is sped up for 600%. That live bit of footage that I had there was only a minute long, and I didn't get very far in making any part of the blank round. So it can be deceiving for people who don't really have expectations. It's always a good idea to knock that edge off because it is sharp and it will cut you. I'm pretty happy with the shape, so I'm going to go ahead and do a little shear scraping on the outside. I have that funny ridge there that a little bit of OCD must be kicking in because I really want that thing to go away. It didn't come out when I scraped it, so I'm going to try to cut it out. And it's mostly still there, so I'm just going to do a little bit of shear scraping and clean that up and call it good. So I'm trying to line my banjo up perpendicular to the bedways so that I have a point of reference when I'm using my skew to make the tenon. This tenon would be just about perfect for a dry piece of wood. You can see the gap there is relatively small. When they make the jaws, they cut them apart from a single round blank of metal. And so when you close the jaws all the way, it's no longer a perfect circle because you're missing the width of whatever they cut the blank apart with. So ideally, you get the best clamping pressure and the most contact along the tenon or the mortise if the jaws are at the position where it was a perfect circle before it was cut. And that's usually not a very big gap. So this tenon is lovely, except that this is on a piece of wet wood that's going to go in the kiln and dry and oval. So I'm probably going to end up having to cut that one down to fit into my smaller set of jaws because I made it on the smaller end of my range for whatever reason. I'm starting to cut into some of that figure, and you can see that it's bouncing back on me and it's not wanting to cut real smooth. Part of my feather. I marked about 10% of the diameter as far as what I'm going to leave the thickness at, and I'm roughing out the inside using mostly straight cuts into the side grain. And you can see when you do that, you get really nice long shavings coming off. And when you start to swing in to go towards the middle, or like when I cut across the rim, you can see that you still get some long shavings, but you also get a lot of powder, and that's the end grain that you're cutting into. So it's a lot easier to just go straight into the bowl as long as you can, and then you don't have to cut into the end grain nearly so much. You see there are shavings, but there's also a lot of powder that's built up on the tool rest. I tried to get into the habit from the very beginning of stopping the lathe when I need to adjust the tool rest because, as Robo Hippie says, your tool rest makes a horrible scraper, or something like that. That's really tearing that up. I think that I had the lathe speed at around 600 for the most part of the hollowing, and I just turned it up to, I think, probably 8, maybe 850 to see if I could get a cleaner cut across the figure on the rim. Need to take off just a little bit more at the transition point down here. Feels pretty good. Don't leave the chuck key in the chuck. That's a habit I got into without realizing it was a bad habit, so don't do that. Well, there's a little figure in there. We'll put some sealer on it and put it in the kiln. I gotta clean up my mess. I also have 2 wheelbarrows and a big garbage can full of shavings, minus the ones that Lori took for the snake and the bunny. That's a lot of shavings. Which is why I sucked it up and ordered a coring system. Yay. Do a little video update on the kiln. I have 20 bowls in there. They were not all put in at the same time. I set the humidity target at 70 to start with. That's still where it is. It says it is 74.7% humidity in the kiln right now, which means the light bulb is not on because it doesn't have that 5% difference. So, let's see. Let's look at number 1. And number 16. Here's the one I just did. Let's see how that's doing too. And number 9. Okay. So this is number 9. It was 707 grams when I put it in. We're down to 515. Okay, it's definitely going oval. This is number 1, first one, so that's been in there the longest. Started at 931, it's down to 682. And the one we just did, which I put in the kiln on the 16th, so what's that, 5 days ago, number 20. It started at 632 grams and it is down to 485. And they all look good so far. No cracks. Okay, probably lower the humidity 10% here in maybe another week. Just let it go nice and slow. Next week we're going to have a project video and a bonus Workshop Wednesday video, so that's exciting. Until then, you all be safe out there. And it's Earth Day. Don't be a jerk to the earth.